We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Now let's begin. I always believe that when a marriage falls apart, it happens in pieces, slowly, quietly, like a dripping faucet that erodes the foundation over time. But I was wrong. Some betrayals don't come as a whisper. They come as a detonation, a bomb dropped in the middle of what you thought was unshakable ground. And my wife, she was standing at ground zero, smiling like she hadn't just destroyed everything we built. I saw it coming before she even opened her mouth. The nervous way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she licked her lips, as if she were preparing to say something that could not be undone. It was all there, the signs of a woman about to detonate a nuclear bomb on our life together. Listen, she started, her voice overly sweet, carefully measured, rehearsed down to the syllable. I've been thinking a lot about us. I didn't move, didn't even blink. I just let her dig her own grave. I love you, she continued, reaching across the table, her fingertips grazing mine in a gesture that felt more like an apology than affection. I really do. And I don't want to lose what we have, but that one word, that word is where marriages go to die. She took a breath, pretending to be vulnerable, pretending to be hesitant when in reality, I knew she had been working up the nerve to say this for weeks, if not months. I feel like I need to explore things. Experience different connections, meet new people. I stared at her. A beat passed. So what are you saying? I asked, my voice disturbingly calm. She exhaled, clearly relieved that I hadn't outright rejected whatever nonsense she was about to spin. I want us to open the relationship. And just like that, the entire world shifted. It was as if someone had yanked the air out of my lungs, except I refused to let it show. Not I want to leave you. Not I made a mistake. She wanted to eat her cake and have it too. She wanted the freedom to sleep around while keeping me as her safety net, the ever-reliable husband she could return to once she was done exploring. I leaned back in my chair, took a sip of my beer, and just watched her. Watch her squirm. All right, I said simply. Her lips parted, her eyes widening in sheer disbelief. Wait, really? Sure, I shrugged. If you want to see other men, that's fine. I should probably do the same. For comparison. The color drained from her face so fast, I thought she might pass out. This wasn't how she pictured this conversation going. Not at all. She had expected outrage, heartbreak, begging. She had envisioned a conversation where I told her she was my world, my everything, that I couldn't stand the thought of losing her, that I'd do anything to make her stay. She was ready for a desperate, sobbing husband. Instead, I was calm, smirking even, and that rattled her to her core. You'd compare me, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if the very idea of it was offensive. Of course, I said smoothly, tilting my head. Isn't that what this is about? You want to evaluate whether you're missing out on something. Why wouldn't I do the same? She faltered, trying to regain control. That's not the point, isn't it? I countered, swirling the beer bottle in my hand. Because if you want the freedom to test the waters, it's only fair that I do the same. You don't want me held back, right? She swallowed. I don't want you to see other women. I laughed. I actually laughed. Oh, and why not? Because this isn't about that, she argued, voice rising slightly. I just want to expand my experiences. That doesn't mean I want our relationship to change. I let out a slow, deliberate chuckle. You want to sleep with other men, but expect me to stay exactly the same. She flinched, her face draining of color, but she recovered quickly, shaking her head. It's not just about sex. Of course it is, I said bluntly. You wouldn't be asking for this if you didn't have someone in mind already. That hit the mark. A flicker of panic crossed her face. Just a flash, but it was enough. She had someone in mind. She was already seeing someone. I leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, eyes locking onto hers. Who is he? She froze. What? You're not asking for an open relationship because you might want to date other men, I said, voice low, sharp. You're asking because you already have someone lined up. So who is he? Her fingers clenched into a fist. She bit her lip, a nervous tic I had seen too many times when she was hiding something. That's not fair. Life's not fair. I cut her off, pushing my chair back. She shot up too, frustration flashing in her eyes. This isn't how I wanted this to go. I smirked. Yeah, I bet. For the first time since this conversation started, she was the one panicking. She thought she was in control. that she could manipulate the situation, dictate the rules, and still have me waiting like a fool while she ran off to screw some other guy. But she had underestimated me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I simply started digging, and it didn't take long. A few well-placed password resets, some location tracking, and a well-connected friend in IT. His name was Daniel. Co-worker. Single. A few years younger than me. A guy I had met before at one of her company's events. I had shaken his hand, made polite small talk with him, while the whole time, he had probably been fantasizing about screwing my wife. The anger was there, simmering beneath the surface like a volcano waiting to explode. But I didn't let it. Because this wasn't about rage. This was about control. And I was about to show my wife just how powerless she really was. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I let her believe she had one. I played along, smiled at her, nodded when she talked about boundaries and honesty. Meanwhile, I started leaving the house more, ignored her texts, became distant, and she noticed. "Who are you texting?" she asked one evening, her voice too casual. I glanced up, smirking. "Why do you care?" Her fingers tightened around her glass. Just like that, the script had flipped. She had expected me to be broken, desperate. Instead, I was thriving. And for the first time in our marriage, she was the one drowning. The moment I stopped chasing, the moment I didn't crumble beneath her betrayal, the power shifted. She noticed it in the little things. The way I no longer asked where she was going. How I didn't wait up for her when she came home late. How I wasn't overly affectionate. No longer pulling her into my arms, as if she was the center of my universe. And it was driving her insane. One night, she tried to initiate intimacy. Out of nowhere. Forced. Like she was trying to stake her claim before it was too late. I turned her down. The shock on her face was priceless. "But, you always want to," she murmured, sitting up in bed, confusion clouding her expression. I just shrugged. Not in the mood. She didn't sleep well that night. I could feel the way she tossed and turned, sneaking glances at me in the dark. For the first time in our marriage, she was uncertain about me, and that terrified her. By now, I had little doubt that she already had someone in mind when she suggested opening the relationship. Women don't just wake up and decide this. They plan it. They test the waters. I'd spent weeks playing along, making her think she was in control. Meanwhile, I had all the information I needed, and I wasn't the only one feeling the shift. Daniel was panicking too. A block number called me 3 times before I finally picked up. "Hello." I answered casually. Silence. Then, a hesitant voice. "Listen, man, I don't want any trouble." I smirked. "Bingo. You already have it," I replied. He exhaled sharply. I didn't know she was serious about this. "She told me you were on board." "Uh-huh." I let the silence drag on, waiting for him to squirm. I don't want this blowing back on me," he admitted finally. "I have a career, a reputation. If this gets out, then maybe," I said, cutting him off, "you shouldn't have slept with another man's wife." Silence. I hung up. Checkmate. That night, I walked through the front door late. She was waiting. "Who is she?" she snapped the moment I stepped inside. I raised an eyebrow. "Why do you care?" She grabbed my phone, scrolling through my messages. She found nothing. Of course, she wouldn't. "You don't like this feeling, do you?" I asked, watching her with amusement. Her hands trembled. "What are you talking about?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a whisper. "The uncertainty, the doubt, the fear that maybe you're not as irreplaceable as you thought you were." Her breath hitched. "You were fine when you thought I'd sit back and let you have your fun," I continued. "But now that the shoe's on the other foot, now you can't handle it." A tear slipped down her cheek, but I felt nothing for her anymore. She had built this house of cards, and now it was collapsing. She came home one evening to find an envelope sitting on the kitchen counter. Inside, every text message, every call log, every hotel reservation. Her face drained of color as she flipped through the pages, her hands trembling. "You knew," she whispered. I took a slow sip of my drink, setting it down carefully. "Of course I knew." Her breath shuddered. "Since when?" "Long enough." Tears welled in her eyes. "So what now?" I exhaled slowly, sliding another set of papers across the table. "A separation agreement." She inhaled sharply. "No," she whispered. "I don't want to lose you." I let out a dark chuckle. "Funny. You weren't worried about that when you were screwing him." A sob racked her body. But I didn't care. She had expected me to sit back and accept being second place. Instead, I had made her realize she was never first. She tried everything. She cried. She pleaded. She swore she made a mistake. Please, she sobbed, gripping my shirt, her fingers trembling. Let's fix this. I looked down at her, my face blank. Fix what? Us, she whispered. I don't want anyone else. Just you. I tilted my head. No, you don't get to say that. Tears streamed down her face. Why not? Because, I said, voice cold. You weren't saying it before you realized I could replace you. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the floor. Good. Let her feel the weight of her choices. The next morning, I got another call. I swear, man, I didn't mean for this to happen. Daniel stammered the second I answered. I smirked. Oh, so now you regret it. Look, she showed up at my place last night crying, he admitted. She said you were divorcing her, and that it was my fault. I let out a low chuckle. She's right. I can't have this blow up in my face, he panicked. I have a reputation, man. I work with her. If this gets out, I cut him off. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you slept with another man's wife. Click. He was just as much of a coward as she was. The house felt different. I had always assumed that if things ever fell apart between us, it would be sudden, like a fire burning through everything in its path. But it wasn't. It was slow, painfully slow. The walls that once held our laughter, our late-night conversations, our unspoken promises, now felt like a cage closing in on her. I could see it in her eyes every time she looked at me. She had thought she'd be the one in control, that she'd be free, liberated, the one making the choices. Instead, she was now living in a house where her presence no longer mattered. And that realization was eating her alive. She had become a ghost in her own home. She would walk into a room. I wouldn't look up. She would try to start conversations, and I would barely respond. She would cook my favorite meals, hoping I'd notice. But I didn't, because I didn't care anymore. And that was what terrified her the most. She tried everything. She started dressing differently, more conservatively, more like the woman I had fallen in love with years ago. She started leaving work early to be home when I got back. She started lingering around me, waiting for me to give her attention. But I never did. One night, she slid into bed next to me and pressed her body against mine, her fingers tracing my arm like they used to. I didn't react. You're freezing me out, she whispered, voice breaking. Please talk to me. I sighed, rolling onto my back, staring at the ceiling. What's there to talk about? She swallowed hard. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight. I got caught up in something stupid, and I turned my head slowly, meeting her eyes. You weren't thinking straight, I repeated. She nodded quickly, hope flashing in her eyes. Yes, I wasn't thinking. No. I cut her off, my voice low and even. You were thinking very clearly. You planned this. You weighed your options. You looked at me, at our marriage, and decided I wasn't enough. Tears welled up in her eyes. That's not true. I let out a cold chuckle. You don't get to rewrite history just because you don't like how it ends. She flinched, and for the first time in our entire relationship, I saw fear in her expression. Not fear of me, fear of the truth. Daniel had ghosted her. The man she had risked everything for. He wasn't calling. He wasn't texting. He was gone. And that broke her even more. I could see it happening in real time. The hope she had held on to, the belief that maybe, just maybe, Daniel was still there waiting for her, was crumbling. And I let her sit in that silence. She was waiting for a message that would never come. She was waiting for a man who had already moved on. She was waiting for someone who only wanted her when she was forbidden. But now, she wasn't some exciting secret. She was a liability, and he wanted nothing to do with her anymore. She had thrown away her marriage for a man who couldn't even bother to check in on her. That was my real revenge. Not yelling, not fighting, not screaming, just watching as the weight of her own choices destroyed her. One evening, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. Her eyes were red, swollen, like she had been crying for hours. She didn't look up when I walked in. Did he call? I asked, knowing full well the answer. She flinched, her grip tightening on the phone. I chuckled, shaking my head. I told you, didn't I? Men like him don't love women like you. He liked the idea of you, the chase, the secrecy. But now, you're just a woman who destroyed her own life, and he wants nothing to do with you. Her body trembled. I didn't know it would be like this. I sat down across from her, leaning forward, resting my elbows on the table. That's the problem, I said quietly. You thought you were the one in control, but you never were. He never loved you. And now, you've lost everything for nothing. Tears slipped down her face. I can fix this. I smirked. You can't fix what's already broken. And with that, I stood up and walked away, leaving her alone with the wreckage of her choices. The divorce papers were finalized. She begged, pleaded. I'll change, she whispered. I'll be better. Just don't go. But I was already gone. I had spent weeks watching her unravel, watching her realize she had destroyed something she could never get back. And now, she had to live with it. No home, no security, no husband waiting for her, just emptiness. She had spent so much time wondering if there was something better out there. Now, she would spend the rest of her life knowing she had already lost the best thing she ever had. The day she lost her job, I wasn't surprised. I had known it was coming. It was inevitable. Daniel had done exactly what I expected him to do. Cut all ties, wipe his hands clean, and act as if nothing ever happened. After our last conversation, I knew he was spiraling, desperate to protect his image. He had stopped contacting her, stopped replying to her messages, stopped answering her calls. And now, he had taken the final step. I found out through a mutual acquaintance that he had filed a complaint against her at work. Apparently, his version of events was that she had been pursuing him, that she had pressured him, and that he had felt uncomfortable but didn't know how to say no. She was completely blindsided. Please, she had begged HR. It wasn't like that. But it was too late. He was already distancing himself, throwing her under the bus to save his own career. And her bosses? They weren't going to take a chance on a scandal. They fired her on the spot. No references. No severance package. Just emptiness. She had risked everything for Daniel. And now, she had nothing. I knew it was coming. The moment I heard she had lost her job, I knew she would come crawling back. Because that's what people like her do. They burn bridges and then try to walk across the ashes, hoping the fire won't consume them. And sure enough, she showed up at my door 3 days later. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through my phone when I heard the knock. I knew it was her before I even answered. When I opened the door, she looked pathetic. Her hair was disheveled. Her eyes were puffy. Her clothes were wrinkled like she hadn't slept in days. She had always been so composed, so confident. Now, she looked like a broken woman. Please, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Just hear me out. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. What? Tears filled her eyes. I made a mistake. I smirked. Yeah, you did. She swallowed hard. I lost my job. Daniel. He threw me under the bus. I have nothing left. I tilted my head. Sounds like a you problem. Her breath hitched. I know I don't deserve another chance, but please. I just need you to know that I regret everything. I let the silence stretch between us, letting her sit in that discomfort. Then, I stepped back and slowly closed the door in her face. No words. No goodbye. Just the cold, brutal finality of rejection. Months passed. I moved on. I started seeing someone new. I built a new life for myself. One where I was no longer just some woman's backup plan. And then, one evening, I ran into her. She was standing outside a coffee shop, her arms wrapped around herself, her posture defensive, small. She saw me before I saw her. And when our eyes met, I saw everything. Regret, loss, pain. She had thought she could replace me. She had thought she was the one in control. But in the end, she had destroyed herself. She gave me a weak, broken smile. One of those desperate, pleading smiles that screamed, please say something. Please acknowledge me. But I just looked at her, expression unreadable. Then, I turned and walked away. A year passed. I hadn't heard from her in a long time. Then, one night I got a message. Her, I know you probably won't reply, but I just want to say I'm sorry. For everything. I stared at the screen for a long moment, considering. Did she mean it? Did she finally understand what she had done? Or was she just trying to ease her own guilt? I placed my phone down without replying. She didn't deserve closure. She didn't deserve my forgiveness. She deserved exactly what she got, silence. I moved on. I found happiness. I found someone who valued me, someone who would never look at me and wonder if I was good enough. And her, she was still stuck in the past, living in the ruins of a life she had destroyed with her own hands. She had spent so much time trying to compare me to other men. She had spent so much time wondering if there was something better. Now, she would spend the rest of her life knowing that she had already lost the best thing she ever had. She had thought she was the one making choices. She had thought she was the one controlling the game. But in the end, she was just another cautionary tale. And me? I never looked back. The best revenge was simply walking away.